Seems common sense is past tense, just like the dinosaur. Political correctness has got a lot to answer for, 'cause common sense ain't that common anymore.
Now on weekends, the Treasury of Common Sense.
Yeah, look, I don't pick my mate Leith Van Onselen as someone who goes out there on the stage in the outback with maybe a couple of tinnies by his side, picking up a guitar and just, going forth and creating great music. But we wanted something that was very much to do with this segment, and it's all about common sense. And the feedback I get from you on Leith is always, thank goodness he's there, is always, why aren't the politicians listening to this bloke? And he's going to knock it out of the park again today. How are you, mate?
Yeah, I'm good, thanks, Luke. Love the new intro, mate.
Beautiful. Well, you can thank a bloke called Pearso, who listens to us and thought, you know what, it needs something, and he gave us that. So we'll see where everything ends up. But real wage depression. Now, I hear, and you would hear, and my listeners would hear, our listeners, that the government's saying, oh, look, real wages are growing, and oh, look, we've finally reversed what the Liberals deliberately did for decades. So where are we in terms of real wages?
Yeah, so look, it's a pretty bad story here. So the latest data we've got, it's a few months old. It's for the June quarter of this year. And as of the June quarter, Australia's real wages, so what that is, that's basically your wages once you adjust for inflation. We've obviously had several years of very high inflation above wage growth. But basically, our real wages, so our real spending power, is tracking 6% below what it was at its peak in June 2020, as of June quarter this year. Now, that's roughly at the same level of December 2011 quarter. So we've gone back, 14 and a half years or whatever it is. And the disturbing thing here is the Reserve Bank of Australia this week released its Statement of Monetary Policy. So it releases that every 3 months. And so we received the November Statement of Monetary Policy, and that includes a whole bunch of updated economic forecasts. So this is where the Reserve Bank thinks we're going to be by the end of 2027. And what it showed is that the Reserve Bank's upgraded its inflation forecasts, and as a result, it's downgraded its real wage growth forecasts, because it includes CPI inflation and nominal wage growth, and you can compare the two and you get a real wage growth forecast. And what it actually showed is that the latest Reserve Bank Statement of Monetary Policy showed that we're basically expected to have zero real wage growth to the end of 2027. So we've already gone backwards 6%, and by the end of 2027, the Reserve Bank thinks we're going to be 5.8% below the peak. So we're going to, get 0.2% real wage growth over the next several years by the end of 2027, and our wages are still going to be tracking at the same levels they were in December 2011. So it's pretty extraordinary. So if you think by the end of 2027, we're going to be tracking with purchasing power where we were at the end of the December quarter of 2011. So, and here's the thing, Luke. I've actually charted this and extrapolated the Reserve Bank's forecast on wage growth from the bottom to where they think we are. And if you draw a straight line using that trajectory, it could be another decade from here until we see our real wages recover back to the pre-pandemic levels. So not even talking about the peak. We're talking about just to where they were before the pandemic started. Yeah. So a whole nother decade to basically get back to where we were in, say 2019, which is just extraordinary when you think about it.
So hang on, mate. If you're listening to what the pollies are saying, Treasurer Jimbo says we've got real wages moving again after, I think I said, a decade of deliberate suppression by the Liberals. Fact check that for me.
Well, sure, we got a couple quarters of positive real wage growth, but that was basically, so instead of being like -7%, we were -6% from the peak. Right. And as I said, currently, as of the June quarter, is the latest data we got, we were tracking at 2011 levels, the end of 2011 levels, and according to the RBA, by the end of 2027, we're still going to be at December 2011 levels. Gosh. So this isn't great, and there's a few reasons for this. So first of all, Australia's labour productivity growth has absolutely collapsed. It's now it's the lowest in the advanced world, what it has been since the pandemic. So we've had shocking labour productivity growth, and what that means is without productivity growth, you really can't get real wage growth, because the only way wages can grow without productivity growth, and this is assuming you don't have a massive rise in commodity prices, which is called in terms of trade windfall. The only way you can get real wage growth is through productivity growth, and if you don't get that, wages can only grow if you basically at the expense of profits. So if you take more from the companies and give more to workers, but that's obviously not sustainable over the long run. And unfortunately, what that means, if productivity growth is so poor, it means that our real wages are basically not going to grow. And the other thing that the federal government's doing, obviously, is flooding the nation with uber aggressive immigration. So we've got, the labour force is growing by nearly 40,000 every single month because we're importing a whole bunch of people. Well, that also can put downward pressure on wages. And here's the disturbing thing. I mentioned that the Reserve Bank's forecast suggests we're going to basically get no wage growth over the next, 3 years. But that's based on the Reserve Bank also forecasting that the unemployment rate's going to fall slightly from where it is over the next 3 years. Because the Reserve Bank, we're currently at 4.5% unemployment. The Reserve Bank's forecast we're going to be at 4.4% unemployment by the end of 2027. So they actually think the unemployment rate's going to come down. But I think we're more likely to see rising unemployment because nearly two-thirds of the jobs growth since the pandemic has been in government-funded sectors, primarily related to the National Disability Insurance Scheme. And that is unsustainable to think that will continue when you've got, growing budget deficits at the state and federal level, and we're growing the labour force by 35,000 every month. So I think if anything, the unemployment rate's going to tick higher, which will then mean lower wage growth.
Yeah, and then we've got house prices going up as well, as one of our listeners makes the observation. Rents, exactly. So the real strength of wages up against rising housing, it's anything but a rosy picture. That's
right, yeah. And obviously the CPI inflation doesn't include the rising cost of house prices. It does include rents in there, but certainly if you're someone with a mortgage or looking to buy with rising house prices, or a renter, because rents are growing very quickly again, you're looking at a pretty nasty picture here. Yeah.
The other thing I think I saw you write through the week was about universal childcare, and the suggestion is that this could become NDIS 2.0 in terms of its affordability, because it's a great idea. Let's do this. And then you just wait a year and it's double or triple the cost, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right. So that was actually colleague Tarek Brooker who wrote that. He did some excellent analysis, but it was on macro business. But certainly. So we've obviously seen the NDIS absolutely ballooning cost. It's now, it's so much further than what the government thought it was going to cost. It's now about $50 billion per year. And that's one of the reasons why we had this low unemployment rate. And now the government basically wants to bring in this universal childcare, which could add tens of billions of dollars of cost onto the budget on top of the NDIS.
Jeez.
And it's really just not affordable, unfortunately. So, sure, it's a good intention policy, but it risks becoming another NDIS 2.0, just costing tens of billions of dollars, totally unaffordable. I'd argue it's not particularly equitable the way it's going to roll out. Like, obviously, the money's probably going to go to wealthier people with children more than those who really need it. It's just going to be a whole nother layer of government intervention in the economy that we really don't need. Yeah, especially when the federal budget's already in deficit.
Indeed. All right, let's do this. We have a champion this week. Who have you found, mate?
Okay, so this is going to probably surprise people. We've got Jenny George, who's the former ACTU president and a Labor MP.
Oh, yeah.
Champion. Yeah. Now, Jenny George has broken rank, and for months, she's been banging on about the need to reserve gas on the East Coast, which is something which I've been going on about for years. But also, she wrote an absolutely stunning piece in The Australian this week, fantastic, attacking the Albanese government's drive for net zero. And she basically warned that if the policy is going to drive up our energy costs and taxes, and as well as make Australian manufacturing less competitive and lead to deindustrialisation, all the sorts of things I've been going on about forever. And she said that the priority of households and businesses is, quote, cheaper energy, not Labor's reduction in our 1.1% contribution to global emissions. She said, quote, power has to be affordable and reliable, and it's neither under Labor's energy transition. And she also, attacked the government for the absurd cost of the renewable rollout. So she cited Snowy Hydro 2.0, which was announced by Malcolm Turnbull, so Liberal Prime Minister, to cost $2 billion. but is now expected to cost about $25 billion once you factor in transmission costs. And she said that that's, quote, an absurd amount for a 2.2 gigawatt water battery. and which it is. It's absolutely bonkers, the cost. But that is just a microcosm of the cost of this renewables rollout. That's just one project among many.
Yeah.
She also noted the absurd blowout in transmission projects. All this stuff, adding taxes, adding costs, it's going to drive up electricity bills. She also noted that that the renewable rollout has a, quote, heavy impact on on productive land, biodiversity and the environment, which are obfuscated by policymakers. And she said that without billions in taxpayer-funded subsidies, the renewables transition would have collapsed a long time ago. And she basically said that Australia had a history of abundant energy, low-cost energy, which was an advantage to the nation compared to other nations that helped power our industry. And now that we're basically going to give that away, and as a result, quote, deindustrialisation has set in. So, effectively, here we have a ex-Labor stalwart, an ex-ACTU president, coming out with common sense, breaking rank with Labor and calling them out for what they're doing. As I said, she's been a very strong vocal advocate for domestic gas reservation, and she's also attacking this net zero fantasy, which is fantastic. Like, it's great to see honesty.
Yes.
And it doesn't matter. Look, my whole view, and same with what you said at the start, Luke, about Richo, I don't care what political party, what history, what party you've been from, but if you're talking common sense and you're making sense, we should back it.
Yes.
And it doesn't matter that you're an ex-Labor person or an ACTU president, whatever. The fact of the matter is, everything Jenny George has said on energy in the last 12 months, whether it be on gas or in this absolutely brilliant piece in The Australian, is spot on.
Yeah.
And for that, she's a champion.
See, well said. Yeah, left v right doesn't enter this debate. If we based everything on the degree to which it was commonsensical, then how much further down the path would we be? In so many areas in life, but it gets taken over by political bit players and those with vested interests, and too many in the political class just wave it through and don't go. I mean, if they just for a moment said when they're about to make decision, hang on, what if? And just to run it under the common sense microscope would be so much better off. I've got to go, mate. Great to chat. Macrobusiness.com.au is where you find Leith Van Onselen's work. And